Chad, are you there? Okay. Sam?
Yes, Maris. Yes, hello.
Hi.
Hi. Happy to join you.
Yes, where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from Brussels.
Okay. Sam? Sorry.
Yes, Maris. Yes, Maris. Yeah.
Hi. Sorry.
Hi.
I'm on the live stream for YouTube. You'll hear that's the reason why those are back and forth there. But yeah, nice to meet you. And welcome. Thank you for joining.
My pleasure.
So good. So we have around 10 of us here. So we'll get started so that we don't spend I don't take too much of your time. But yes, thank you everyone for joining this side event for Africa Communications Week. My name is Susan Balu. I am the communications coordinator at Clear Global. And I offered to facilitate this event. We know that this year's theme is Borderless Africa, and I thought that this theme really does fit into the work that we're currently doing at Clear Global, where we're trying to ensure that, like 4 billion people, and I will get into that, but really trying to ensure we are ensuring that 4 billion people in the world who don't often have information because it's not in their language have access to information, and talk a little bit about how innovative and inclusive language technology can help us ensure that we have solutions for a borderless Africa. So I'll get right into my presentation for today. I'll just give you a brief overview of what I'm going to be talking about. So before I get started, sorry guys, I need to record this call for those of us who will not be able to join. There's also going to be a live stream which you can watch on YouTube, but also for the purposes of organization, I'm going to be recording this call. Yes, again, thank you everyone for joining the call. I'm going to be talking about innovative and inclusive language technology solutions for a borderless Africa. Thank you for introducing yourselves. We've got a wide range of people on the call. I'm really excited about the meeting today. And yeah, let's dive right into it. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of what I'm going to be covering today. So ideally, I'll give you a brief introduction about who we are. Some people on the call work for Clear Global. Some are either volunteers with the organization, or some are just hearing about us for the very first time. So I'll give you a very brief overview about Clear Global and what we do. I'll tell you a little bit about a campaign and an initiative we're currently running. It's called 4 Billion Conversations, and it's a movement that we're trying to create in the global South and a little bit in South America, where we're trying to bridge the language divide. And I'll also talk a little bit about our impact and some of the work we've been doing in Africa specifically. We also have other projects running, but I thought it would be good to hear about some of the projects we have in Africa. And last but not least, I'd really love to hear from you guys. I'd like to hear about how you're using technology for some of your projects. What are some of the things you think we should be thinking about when you're talking about a borderless Africa, and how tech can actually play a very big role in this. So I'll talk a little bit about our organization. So some people know us as Translators Without Borders. Some people know us as Clear Global, but ideally we're just one organization. So when we initially started out, we started out in 1993 as an organization called, it was a French organization ideally focused on translation services. And since then, we've grown from that organization in 1993 to Translators Without Borders and now to Clear Global. So we found ourselves getting more people asking us about, what else can we do for you? We initially started out with translation services, but as the need also grew, we realized that we need to do more and we need to scale up. So Clear Global is now our new brand. So we're not saying we are out of translation services, but we're saying we're doing more with these translation services, and I'll get into a bit of it when we are further into my presentation. So ideally, Clear Global is a US nonprofit helping people get vital information and be heard whatever language they speak. And this is really critical because currently we have around 8 billion of us in this planet. Yet 4 billion of us can't speak what we call a power language or a dominant language. So think about your country or your context. You find that there are specific people who don't speak. For example, I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya, and the main languages that people speak are either English or Kiswahili. Yet there is a significant number of people in this country who do not speak these two languages. And that's what we call a power language or a dominant language. So we have, millions of people still in Kenya and also in the world who don't have access to this information. Yet we're talking about progress towards SDGs. We have Vision 2030s, and we have all these initiatives that people don't know about them, or they might not have heard about them because this is literally not in their language. And I'll talk a little bit about why this matters and why having information in your language matters and not just the nearest version of it, and why our work is really important to doing that. So we help people who don't speak the dominant language of their area to get information and the resources they need. And in 2021, we decided to evolve our brand. We are now Clear Global, and our ambition is to help people get equal access to information. And again, as I mentioned, this has not changed. We've grown. So we are removing barriers to communication so people can be heard no matter where they live or no matter which language they speak. So as I mentioned, a very brief history of where we're from is that TWB was founded in 1993 as a French nonprofit called Traducteurs Sans Frontières. For the French speakers in the house, I hope I got that right. And it was originally founded to link the world's translators with vetted nonprofit organizations that focus on health, nutrition, and education. The organization grew quickly, and in 2011, it was incorporated as a nonprofit in the US, and in 2021, we grew again. And then now that's the name change I talked about in terms of Clear Global. So we are trying to find new ways to empower people through language and tech. So our mission is very simple. Our mission is to help people to get vital information and be heard whatever language they speak. So, and this is defined by the acronyms that you see. So our guiding principle as an organization are the acronyms you see on your screen, where we talk about community, language, engagement, accountability, and reach. So Clear Global is actually an acronym, and it's always capitalized, and this is what it means. So these principles are always at the center of our work to ensure that people have access to information no matter which language they speak. So when we're talking about the pillars of our work, you'll find that when we're talking about our organization, there are 3 specific pillars. So we accomplish this mission that, information to people, despite whichever language they speak, we actually do it through these 3 pillars. We have the Translators Without Borders, who are our community of over 100,000 community members who help provide vital information and bridge global language divides. We also have ClearTech, which ideally focuses on creating language technology solutions to help people, to help us scale up our work. So we actually use machine learning, we use AI, including voice to text technology. And yeah, we work with local technology partners to reach more people in local communities and globally. And we also have Clear Insights, which is our research arm, where we use this to find and collect data about hundreds of partner organizations to help translate millions of words and inform humanitarian communication strategies to better support affected communities and marginalized language speakers around the world. So in a nutshell, that is how we divide our work in our organization. Our impact is immense since we started. We've been, just to give you an idea of how much we've been able to accomplish in the last couple of years, is we've been able to translate over 100 million words of vital information in more than 450 languages, working with over 600 partner organizations supporting communities worldwide. Now, these are the numbers, but they mean more than that. In real terms, our projects have helped millions of people access information they need and, more importantly, can understand. We've built multilingual language technologies such as conversational AI chatbots to provide people who speak marginalized languages with accurate and reliable health and safety information. We've researched social, cultural, information, and communication needs of those most affected by global issues such as COVID-19, conflicts, and climate change. And more importantly, we have provided language support and resources to local and international organizations so they can better help people in need and achieve so many other things. So, further in my presentation, I'll give more concrete examples of our work, but here are just some impact numbers for you to get a sense of why we do what we do. So I think I've emphasized this in the beginning of my introduction, and a lot of the work that we are trying to do in trying to bridge this language divide. So think about it, we're 8 billion of us, like 8 billion, yet we have 4 billion who don't talk their nearest power language. So what our work is trying to do is actually trying to bridge this divide. So there's been a lot of progress when you're talking about the digital divide, but there isn't enough progress when you're talking about the digital language divide. And a lot of the work that we're currently doing at Clear Global is really important because we're actually trying to bridge this language divide. So this is a really nice quote I really like. This is from Kalika Bali. She's from Microsoft Research India. And I really like this quote because it really resonates a lot with the work that we're currently doing at Clear Global. The work that we're doing at Clear Global, where we're talking about, where she talks about bridging, we talk about the digital divide now, and now we're seeing a language divide, and that language divide is just getting bigger and bigger. Think about it, like we have millions of people logging on every day. They're getting a phone. When you look at Africa and South Asia, or if you look at the global South, access to mobile phone and the internet has, I think, quadrupled over the past couple of years. And we have millions of people accessing the internet, having a smartphone, but they're unable to get information that they need. So you can go onto Google, you can go on to any search engine, and a lot of this, most of the time, is not information you're able to find in your language. And part of the research that we've done and part of the projects we've done have shown that people are actually feel more empowered when the information is in their language. You're able to understand faster. And while translations are great, and we actually do them, it's a very core part of our work. We find that when we actually do important translations for some of our services, it's great to have that, and the information is really good. But when the information is just in English or in Hindu or in Russian or in just any other power language, people don't understand it fast enough. And you find that a lot of people are left out of these conversations. So it might be conversations on, hey, I'm in a humanitarian response and I'm stuck and I don't know what to do. The information is not there, because ideally humanitarian responders would come in, and the first thing they would be like, if they're coming to Kenya, for example, they'll be like, people speak Swahili. So the information needs to be in Swahili. And we found that some of our research actually showed that in a specific area where we were going to do there was a response relating to COVID-19, Swahili was not the best option. We needed to go a bit further and actually ask the right questions on which is your preferred language. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the work we've been doing about that. But just to emphasize that the language divide is a huge problem and something that we actually need to address. So there's some critical areas that we're currently working in when we're trying to bridge this divide. So there's lots to talk about, and there are a lot of thematic areas you can focus on. But I think for us, we found that these are critical areas for us to actually achieve some of the initiatives and the goals that even as a world, or even as an organization, that we would really be important to have. So we have health, mainly focusing on girls and women's rights, sexual reproductive health, SRH. We also look at climate and livelihood resilience, and how important it is for that farmer who's in a rural area to get information about how to farm, in his information about farming and how to ensure his resilience of his crops and also his own livelihood, that this is important information for him to have in his own language. Financial inclusion is also a very critical part of what we're currently working on. And we also have refugees and migrants. So really looking at humanitarian responses. So you'll see that the work I'm going to cover today is mainly going to focus on our work in Rwanda and our work in Kenya, but we do have our responses in Bangladesh and also in Ukraine. We've really done some interesting research there to also see the plight of refugees and migrants, in them getting information in their own languages and how important and impactful it is for them. It's often life-saving for them to get this information. And it's really amazing to be part of this process and really talk about why we need to scale this up. So I've talked a bit about the 3.5 billion people. We just call them the 4 billion people. So, a lot of it, even if you look at your own context, and I'd really like to hear about your, any thoughts you may have, please put them in the chat. But we've always seen that official languages of governments, businesses, and the wealthy will always be these power languages. So how do we ensure that those people who don't speak these power languages actually do have access to information? If it's in terms of aid, if it's in terms of money, or just information that they need on their day-to-day, how do we ensure that they get this vital information? So I've talked about these 4 billion people and how they don't speak these languages of power, and how this often just disproportionately affects them on any level. Just think about it. For me and you, or any other person maybe on this call, it's very easy for us to just go on our phone and just check, I need information on this. You can decide if you want it in English, if it's in French, in the power languages. But for people who are either you're a migrant, or you're a refugee, or you're in a rural setting where you do not have access to such information, or literacy levels are also an issue, it's going to be a problem for you to get any of this information. So we are really trying to change this power dynamic to ensure all these languages that I have on my right, if it's in Hala, if it's Fulani, if it's Butana, Yoruba, Tamil, all this should actually be available. And one of the things we've realized is when people learn about the work that we do at translators or at Clear Global, they're always like, I always assumed you'd be translating, in the power languages, but I realized someone is asking about the Luo. The Luo is like is a local language here in Kenya. And they'd be so fascinated that, their own language would actually be featured in a document that would be talking about all these conversations. And that's why it's important for us to bridge this language divide. I've talked about the billions and why this is done. They're often locked out of critical conversations. So how do we move forward? How do we ensure that they're getting the right information, yet then they do not have access to it in their language? So that's what we are really trying to change, the power dynamic, to ensure we're bridging this language divide. So I think we've talked about the main thematic areas, but about some of the things we're facing as a world right now. We have the global health crises like COVID-19. We don't know when the next pandemic will be. We're just doing a lot of preparations around it. Climate change is huge right now. Sexual reproductive health, human rights abuses, sustainable agriculture, food crisis, survivor support for conflict. All these are really life-critical conversations that we should be having with these people, but they're not in their language. So it's so fascinating that sometimes we often forget, especially when you're speaking or you have access to a power language or a dominant language, it's quite easy for you to have these conversations. But think about someone who doesn't have this. They want to know about climate change. They want to know about their sexual reproductive health. They want to know all these things, but they do not have information in their language. So this gap is where we work. If all this is anything to go by and you want to get a better understanding of what we do, is that we have power languages. My screen keeps shaking, but we have power languages, and then we have low resource languages. So the world's greatest opportunity to drive change for good. And if we are able to bridge these two, if we're able to ensure that the power languages and these low resource languages are able to get this information, this critical information, in a way that people are able to understand and in their language, we're able to bridge this gap. And it's a huge mission and a vision for us, but we actually do believe, and we have seen the impact that it has when people have information in their language. It makes them feel more empowered, and they're able to understand, they're able to make decisions for themselves. It's actually something that is life-changing for them. So how do we fix this at Clear Global? So we work in research, we work for, so understanding how people are marginalized by language and communication challenges. So really thinking about how we do development and how we do humanitarian setting as well. So really looking at the power dynamics and how this is also affecting, if it's, let's say, one thing we've learned in, let's say, in our research work is women are always disproportionately affected. So for example, how do we change such a power dynamic? If you're responding to women in a refugee crisis, or if they're migrants, or if they're trying to get access to information on agriculture, yes, their sexual reproductive health. So research is actually the basis of what we do. So trying to understand how people are marginalized by language and communication to ensure we are actually employing the right tools and the right, so the tools, the right methodologies to ensure that these people are getting access to this information. AI and tech is a very big part of it. So remember when I talked about translations is a very big and core part of our work, but we realized we can actually scale this up. So I'll talk a little bit more about the language AI that we've done for more languages and how some specific use cases can actually yield high social impact and partnership. So we don't work in a vacuum. We understand that this is actually driven from local to a much higher level. And, we're trying to bring together global South technology expertise with grassroots organizations. So really working with people who are, in these countries, trying to ask them what are the needs, what are the issues, and trying to create use cases based on our research to create technology that actually works for these marginalized speakers. So we have 3 guiding principles that we're currently using. We really want this to be driven by grassroots organizations. So really trying to talk about tech from grassroots level to ensure that we are able to understand their needs, but also bring in the expertise to build African AI built by Africans, and also look at equitable funding, and also looking at the funding dynamics of how all this is done and how we can really create a case for marginalized speakers to ensure that it's a gain for them, but also looking at organizations that do this from grassroots level to ensure that they have enough funding to build this AI. And where we come in as Clear Global is actually to play a catalyst, a matchmaker, and an innovator. So we are really interested in working with grassroots organizations to build this African AI, to build African AI built by Africans, and more importantly, really focus on the equitable funding part, where we're coming in to ensure that we're matchmaking the right organizations for the right cause and the right use cases. So the idea of what we're trying to do right now. So I've talked about the digital divide. I've talked about the language divide. So for us, we're trying to bridge the digital language divide. And a lot of the work we're trying to do is actually around building chatbots and and I'll get to that. But I also wanted you to get an idea of where we are at. So according to the International Telecommunication Union, ITU, in Africa, only 33% of the population was using internet in 2021. And Africa is approximately 1/3 of the world's languages are evidenced in population, anywhere between. So we have around 1,000 to 2,000 languages in Africa alone. Yet we have multiple people who are logging on for the very first time on the internet, accessing their smartphone for the very first time, trying to find critical information about some of the areas we've talked about, but they don't have that. So how do we change this power dynamic? How do we work with grassroots organizations to build this divide, to bridge this divide, and at the same time, really build solutions that are beneficial for the rest of the marginalized speakers? And I'll get to that. So how do we do it? So I'll talk about, as Clear Global, we do a lot. I think it depends with how you've interacted with us, but specifically for this session, I want to talk about our program tech work that I think is doing a lot. So most of our projects do, as I've mentioned, focus on translations, but increasingly we work also on audiovisual projects, subtitling, dubbing, localization, and plain language. So really, we've also had projects on machine translation systems for Swahili. That was for a project for business registration services in Kenya. Then we have machine translations for Kurdish, multilingual text and audio glossaries, apps, training for the first Rohingya interpreters, and training courses for volunteers, translators, interpreters, and humanitarian workers. So we do a lot. But my focus for today was specifically around the work that we're doing in our tech work, and how hopefully this can create a borderless Africa, especially when you're talking about specific topics like the thematic areas I've mentioned. So I'll quickly go through this, because ideally I was just supposed to present for like 30 minutes, and then the other 30 I really wanted to engage you guys to get a sense of where you're at and what you know about AI. So for here, I'm going to talk about, let me just use my screen. There's so this is our tech program for 2023. We have a machine translation project currently running in Rwanda. It's a collaboration between GIZ and Digital Omuganda, which is a grassroots level organization in Rwanda, not Uganda, in Rwanda. And we're working to foster education and economic inclusion in Rwanda. So we are providing Kinyarwanda language support to improve the learning experience for people who use Atingi, which is a learning platform with over 300 courses available. So you'll see, for example, on my left or on your right, Atingi is only useful for educated people with English language proficiency. So what our work is trying to do is change that. So most respondents had difficulty with English being their main language of instruction, and university students emphasized the importance of knowing technical skills in English to enable them to join the labor market. So students are particularly interested in learning more about technical topics such as AI, and are keen to have this information available in languages other than English. So this is just one of the projects we're currently running. The last 2 weeks, we actually had 2 weeks of a hackathon where we got students from various institutions who were able to join the hackathon. They were able to do a few steps within, so they joined the hackathon, and then they were given specific tasks to do, and they were trying to problem solve. And we could really see the interest that they have around this. So it's actually working in setups where we are asking the people what the use case is and asking them how can we support on the same. We also have, so how we're doing this in Rwanda. So we are leveraging the knowledge of our community to create machine translation models for social impact in Rwanda. So we are building these machine translations models, and we are using the Sentence Society platform. So this will help us develop a solution to make information accessible for Kinyarwanda speakers all over the world. So so this was not just last week, but I think like a few weeks ago, we ran a data collection pilot to provide contributors a chance to test the platform and troubleshoot. So how does it work? So we create a licensed reusable content set. We grow native speaker communities, like for example, like this one in Rwanda. We process the language data, and then we bring online in new useful ways, and then we drive quality with use and new data. So we are doing this, sorry, was it last week but one? Or a few weeks, no, last week, that's when we were doing the actual testing for this project. So the other one is, I'm just going to mention this. So we've also created some multilingual chatbots that enable people to ask questions and get information in their languages. So Sheu was one of my colleagues is here, she can talk about it. But Sheu is one of the multilingual chatbots that has done really well. So Sheu is a chatbot that would provide information about COVID-19 and Ebola, and the content was ideally in Hausa, Kanuri, and English. It's had over 3,000 users, and it's been doing very, very well. Then we also have Planeta Azul for migrants in South America, around 185 users in Ecuador, 181 in Peru, and 33 in Mexico. And in Kenya, the one that I mentioned, the business registrations, the BRS bot for financial inclusion in partnership with the Kenyan organization Think is also one of the projects that we've done. So our bots use NLP, natural language processing technology, so that people can ask anything in their own words. So we actually foresee this being something we can scale up in different areas, like the areas I've mentioned around sexual reproductive health, if it's climate change, if it's livelihoods. These are critical areas that we've seen where people are getting information in their language. They're actually more grateful for it. Yeah. What next? So how to achieve a borderless Africa using innovative technology solutions. So I thought this would be a good opportunity for us. I think we're around 12 of us on the call to answer some of the questions based on just what you've heard today, what you know, and how you foresee maybe using this in your organization or trying to change this from, some of the things you've had so far. I wanted to get a sense of where you're at. So I was going to do random breakout rooms for you to discuss these topics. So let me just confirm how many we are. I see we are 13 of us, which is okay. So there are 3 questions. So let me just go through that very quickly. Sorry. So ideally, as Clear Global, one of the things we're trying to do is, I've talked about the 4 billion conversations movement, ideally trying to get a network or an ecosystem of people who are really interested in bridging this digital language divide, particularly for marginalized speakers. And the idea is to have this driven by grassroots organizations and global partners. And it's critical that this process is driven by local organizations. They take ownership of it, and really being at the center of these decisions and discussions. So I'd be interested to hear how you see this working out in your own context. Do you foresee any risks or challenges of this approach? What are some of the things we should be focusing on while enabling this change in partnerships between you and other like-minded organizations? But ideally, I want to get a sense from you, like, if this was supposed to happen, if you had the opportunity to bridge this digital language divide, what would you do? How would you reach more marginalized speakers? Then the other question was just on, for us as an organization, our vision is to have, of course, to bridge the digital language divide and all this, but, our vision is to have an African AI built for Africa. So what challenges have you experienced? Have you used AI before in this space, especially in the global South? Are there challenges that you foresee let's say, if you were to do partnership with such organizations? And do you see it being a barrier to your organization, if you are to be part of something like this? And how would you want to belong to an ecosystem of partners? A big part of this equitable funding part is to ensure that local organizations take ownership, and it doesn't feel like we are the ones telling donors what they need, but actually moving the conversation from really bottom up to having those conversations on AI. So if the issue is, how do we understand machine translation? How do we understand AI? What is AI? How do we understand NLPs, for example? So a lot of this will need to come from local organizations, and then really think about their use cases and how we as Clear Global can come in and support this. So I'm going to make it random. I'm going to create some breakout rooms. I'll divide you up randomly, and then I will put this in the chat. I will put the questions in the chat for you to share. But yeah, I'll stop there so that in case anyone has any questions, I'll pause there so that in case you have any questions, you can share them now. Good. Hopefully there'll be more from the chats. So let me just let me share the first question with you guys in the chat. So I'll give you around 15 minutes to discuss, and then we can come back to plenary where we can have separate discussions. So this is the first question. It's long, I know, but I wanted to give it context. So that's question one, and then this is question two. Oops. This is question two for you. And then this is question three. So I think it would be faster if we just break out into different breakout rooms, and yeah, we can get started. So looking forward to hearing from you guys. I think I've talked for very long. I'll assign automatically. And yeah, so just room one. No, sorry. Just give me a sec. No. Okay. So we'll be one extra, but I'll be joining the room separately. Yeah, so all rooms are open now, and you can join. So we'll talk in 15 minutes. Broadcast message. We can talk in 15 minutes. So looking forward to it. Are you able to join? I'll broadcast the messages again. Hopefully they'll reach you. Hi, is it D4? D4, you can join. I've assigned you room 3. Are you able to join?
Please help with reassign me. I have some network issues.
Okay. It's okay. So let me assign you again. So I'll be back.
Okay. Okay.
Welcome back. So we're just going to give it a few more seconds for the rest of the guys to join. And yeah, I'd really like to hear what your discussions are like in the groups and in the rooms. Yeah, so let's talk shortly. Do we have everyone back? Yes, I think we do. So
we are almost here.
okay, that's good.
So before everyone returns, Alex, as I was asking, the AI you are using in your organization, is it conversational AI?
I can share the resource in the chat, and for folks who weren't in our room, and Darina, who's also here, can talk more about it, but we use a software as a service called WeGlot on our website. So it does both automatic translations of languages to different languages, and also you can go in manually and kind of clean up the translation, and you can also create a glossary. So what I was saying as we were breaking up is that it can get you like 70-80% of the way there, especially if you're writing in an accessible manner that lends itself to clear translation. But we do need that human intervention to create the more sensitive translation. And I know that other people are working in kind of sensitive public health contexts, for example. So you really want to make sure that you're getting your language and the way you present things exactly how you want it. We are working in digital financial services, so it's more perhaps an issue of confusion or using the terms that are appropriate in a context. So anyway, I just wanted to share that, and I can put the link to the resource that we use in the chat. And also if Darina wanted to say anything else, go for it, Darina.
All right. Thanks for the clarification.
It looks like, yes, go ahead, Darina.
No, I was gonna say I don't have a ton to add, but it is interesting to see also how the app improves over time, because I've been using it now for 2 years, and I see as time goes, I have to make less and less corrections to it. So this is kind of